Hello, I'm Satyam and this is chapter 1 introduction of our Blender scripting series. So in this video I'm basically going to tell you how to set up your Blender for scripting, and then we'll try to look a bit of coding like moving things around with script, and then we'll look at Blender file API. Alright, so let's get started. So first, this is our Blender screen, and in this we have to open our system console. Alright, so go to like create file, general, Windows, and toggle system console. So this is system console, right? So anything that your script or add-on prints or logs here will be printed. All right. So one thing to note is that whenever I select anything in this, then here the title of the window turns to select whatever .blender exe. All right. So when this command like command prompt is in like select mode, then that is a problem. Right, your Blender cannot actually execute scripts or add-ons when this is in select mode. So you have to turn this select mode on, and to do this you just basically have to point your your cursor or mouse anywhere on the screen and then press enter. Then it will turn to C program like this and blender.exe. Right. So if this is in select mode, then it may cause your Blender to crash. All right, when you try to execute code. So be wary of that. And now let's put it in left side. So here like this. Now this done. Now I'm just gonna scroll to like 1 or 2 lines. Then go to Edit, Preferences, Interface, and then turn these two options on. These are User Tooltips and Python Tooltips. So user tooltip is basically a description of a tool, and the Python tooltips is basically like it actually shows you the Python code of whatever option that is, whether it be a boolean, an input value, or whatever changeable value, even a function. It will show you like how you can access that, and you can actually see it right now too. Like when I hover over like this here, then it shows something like show Python references and tooltips. You can try to do it on your computer too, and then it will show you Python preference view dot show tooltips underscore Python whatever, right? So in this, basically preferences view is your class, and show tooltips is actually an attribute or a method. All right, in this case it is an attribute because it is a boolean value. All right, now whenever you code in Blender or scripted, you have to keep notice of these classes, and we'll look at why in the next part of this video. So let's get started in the scripting right now. So I'll just close this, and one more thing, that you can also see the the tooltips and the Python code in other things like this. All right, like locations, rotation, and scale. So when I hover over this location right now, you can see that there's Python object.location, and then there's a Python code to access that, which is bpy.data.objects, and then the name of the object, which is cube, and then dot location. So dot location is basically attribute of the object cube here, and bpy.data are also classes. So bpy data is our classes. Alright, so data inherits the bpy class, objects inherits the data class, and in this way objects inherits bpy and data both, and then the location is actually like the attribute of object. All right, so I have told you all this nonsense, but I needed to explain this because this is class, and we are basically be going to deal with lots of classes in Blender, right? There's an operator class, like tons of classes. Let me show you this an example. And in Blender docs, like here I have got my Python screen. All right, so when you see these are like application modules, context access, data access, message bus, operators, types, utilities, etc. All right, so let me explain them a bit. So this is context class. So context class is basically what you are working on right now, right? So it is not the whole Blender scene or object or your file. Actually, it is just a small part or a small subset of your Blender file that on which you are currently working on, like an object, for instance. Suppose right now here you can see that right now I have this cube selected. So whenever I reference like any object on Blender, it will by default reference this to that cube, and similar for this to camera and things here, right? So and like and suppose if I select all this, then it's going to reference all of this object. So this is basically the context. And then data access. All right, so context basically also inherits data access here. So data access basically tells us the data about an object. Like, let me show you again. All right, now here the data. So here's some code example. Let me show you the Blender screen here. So if you look at here, there's a few data which are visible, like here locations, rotation, and scale whatever. Right, here's this material data, vertex group, etc. Everything that an object can store comes under data. All right, the next is our message bus. Message bus is a new addition to Blender 4.11. So it basically logs our anything that you want on a change of things. It's like a event handler, or you can say a event listener. Whenever an event happen with a particular object or whatever user defined thing, then it logs it. And then there comes operators. Operators are basically your whatever tools and things that you do, or the shade, smooth, panel cut, everything comes under operator. And you can see too, like when I right clicked and hover over panel cut. All right, this panel cut is a like add-ons operator. So I'll just move to the next one, which is shade smooth. So you can see here the Python code in the tooltips actually shows bpy.ops.object.shade smooth. All right, so ops here is actually the operator class, and there's an object on which object you want to do, and there's the shade smooth method. All right, so this done. Now there's also called types. So this type is basically like your mesh types and data type. Like right now I have chosen this object which is like mesh. All right, this is mesh. We actually call it mesh because it has both edges, etc. And now this is light, so it has a light type. All right, and this is camera type. We can see it here too, like here. If I go to right click, let me just click here, and you can see there's a lot of type like area, armature. Like let me just show you. Oh sorry, like search it, like attribute groups, blend data, etc. Blend data is basically this BPY data. All right, this is blend data, and BPY data is inherits this blend data structure. All right, so and there's object to object ID. Here we can see BPY types object. There's light, there's also light type, etc. All right, so this is it. If you want to like read it, you can read it. It is very long, so we usually do it when we want to, or there's a need to read it. All right, now there's a more thing left. All right, now there's utilities. So right now you can like skip utilities. It is for Blender add-ons, and this too, this is path utilities. So basically whenever we want to import like anything, a blend file or text file in Blender, we can use this path utility. And there's an application data type. All right, we can skip this, and this is BPY props. So right now when we script in Blender directly, we do not need this BPY props. All right, so BPY props actually is your property definitions. Like suppose you are developing an add-on and you want to store your data somewhere in the Blender, so you can actually access it throughout the Blender, right? Not just through objects. So if you have a coding background, you know of a thing called scopes. All right, so like a global scope, local scope. So property definition can act as a global scope. All right, not local scopes. And through this global scopes we can access other objects attributes or anything we want. And there are multiple types of this property. So if you can see here on the right side, this is boolean property, which is to store boolean values. All right, and it comes with various options too. Like you can like add descriptions, like you've seen in the tooltips here, right here. If if you hover over it, you can actually see in the scale that it's written scaling of the object. Now this is actually a slider value and it is a float. All right, so let us see this float value. So this is float value. Here the name was location. In x-axis the description or scale of the object. Now this is translation context menu for different languages, and this is default value. For us the default value of the scale was 1, and the min value you can set min and max, and soft min, soft max. Well, we will discuss these two options later when we code it. And this is steps. So basically the step is how when you slide over it, in how much increment will it go. Like here we can see this increment in like 2 decimal places, like 0.01, right? And this is it, and precision and options, etc. So this is how you can actually store these props, floating values. Now I believe this is done, and now this is standalone modules. We will look at them as it comes and as we need them, but we basically do not need them. All right. uh, but we need math utils a lot, math utils, and sometimes bmesh. All right, so we may need to use this too for now. Now with this done, sorry, now this is done. Now to let's get started to our actual coding. Let me just put it like this. All right, this done. Now like I slided over here. All right, I am not going to tell you how did I do it because I think it should not be included here. All right, so I have created a new text editor from here. All right, now you can name it anything like main one or your first script, but I recommend to not use the name main directly. All right, so this is our first code, and remember that here the select should not appear. And let's import BPY first. So BPY is the module for Blender Python API. All right, now first we need to suppose we want to print how many objects are there, or like we want to print name of all these objects. So first we are going to reference this object. So for it we can use like objects and bpy.data to access the data of the object for name example, and then objects. Like here if I hover over, you can see nothing because these are actually objects, and here you can see that we reference all of these objects. Now first let's try to print them and see what it prints. All right, so when I printed like this, it actually shows us BPY collection and blend data objects. So if you reference your the API which we saw right now, it will also show you blend data objects. All right, and it is because of this data. And there's also BPY collection. It is actually a prop collection object. And one thing to note is that if you see anything like 3 or whatever value inside it, then it is an iterable object, and you can probably access it using like index or keys values. All right, so this is our collection which basically refers to this. And now this is in select mode, so I'll press enter to remove it from the select mode. And now let's print the actual print names of the object. And you can see that there are 3 objects too, and here there are 3 written too. Sorry for a grammar mistake. And all right, so that's not a coincidence, that is because there are 3 objects. So since it is a collection object, we can iterate over it. All right, so let's use a for loop. So for I in objs print I. So when I print it, you can actually see that there are 3 structures. All right, this is structure, and the object is a object. You can reference it on the Blender Python API. You can just Google it and it will show you Blender file API. All right, Blender Python API. You actually have to write in Google Blender Python API. All right, there's a separate documentation for developers, and right now you are using API, so use API. The developers is kind of hard for you starting. All right, so this is in select mode, so I'll press enter. Now if we want to print names, we can directly print names like this, I.name. All right, so this is camera, cube, and light. Now you might think or might ask, how do I know what is how you use this name? Right. It might not be even in Blender API written on the docs. All right. It might not be written. So I am going to tell you in a few seconds why I use this name. All right. So first let's remove this. So remove this and just print objs. Now we are going to reference like cube here. I'm just telling you how to reference this cube. All right. So you know how to do it. So we can access it like this too, and there's a second option, alright, in which we can put like the index here directly. The index here is 0, 1, 2, so it is 1. And there's another way. So suppose if I reference like this objs like this, alright. Now I can access cube like objs, and since this is an iterable object, I can directly write cube here. Alright, so this is how we can access like an object in Blender. There's one more way in which we can directly use our context. So let's suppose I use selected this cube, and then I can just write objs is equal to bpy dot context dot active object. Alright, so here it will like directly select this cube here. So let's go with this. I know that all these options are correct because I'm coding and I know it. Right, I'm teaching you, so I'm your teacher, so I know it. And these are correct. You can try all of this method. So these two are like same code. Alright, you have to write these two on a single line or whatever in a single script to make them work. Alright, so let's run this script again, and then you can see that I have actually accessed the code, the cube here. Now with this done, I believe it is time for us to like actually manipulate the object a bit, and then I'll tell you how I use the for loop and dot name there. Alright, so I access it like objs like cube dot name. Alright, this is for reference. Alright, now with the cube access, I want to change the location. So how I'm going to do it? So let's open our toolbar here, the transform menu, and if I hover over it, I can see that there's bpy.data objects cube dot location. We have actually written bpy.data.objects already, and dot location is just remaining. And dot location is actually telling us that the location attribute of that object, or at the location value. And when we see it thoroughly, we can see that there's a 0 index label here, and in x-axis, and in y there's 1, and in z there's 2. So in like this we can access the location. Alright, so let's try to change the x-axis of that cube. So I'll just write objs dot location 0th index, which is x-axis, and put it 1. So x-axis. Alright, now when I play it, I notice that there's no select here, so I'll just play it. Alright, so this changed it to like by 1, and let's try to do it 2, and here 2, and in y-axis for 1, like here everything is changing, and in z-axis 2. Alright, like here. Now suppose I want to change all of this value at once. So what I can do is I can just directly reference this location list or whatever vector property, and then change it directly, like by directly passing a list to it like this, or 0 0 0 0. Well, you can also use list comprehension to change the value like this. If you know Python very well, then you know list comprehension as well, I believe. Now one thing I forgot to tell you was, let's see this. Right, so print of objs dot location. When I print this, it actually prints like a vector tuple, alright, which contains the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So this is actually a vector property from math-util, alright. So homework is try to like change the rotation of the cube using this code. Like for here, it is rotation. You will just hover over your rotation and scale, include scale too, and try to change the scale of the objects. Yeah, one thing to note is that never put scale to 0. Alright, and you can also try to change dimension this way, but do not do it right now. Just use rotation and scale. Alright, and one thing more, in rotation is actually a radian value. Alright, whenever you put something like here rotation, suppose example, this is not a code here, rotation is equal to 10, then it actually takes it as a radian. Alright, so you have to convert it into degree, which will be a very smaller value. Alright, now this done. Now let's move to the how I use this dot name here. Alright, so I'll close this. I'll also close this menu, like this system console, because we do not need it, and I'll like make it big screen. Alright, so here in your outliner you can see this display mode. Change this to data API. So we are actually accessing blend data objects, alright, right now, and you can see that there are multiple options here from file name to like objects, and now we are actually referencing objects here. I'm just putting your text menu here, text editor, so we see what changes we made. So in objects we selected the cube, and cube, in that we access the name, alright, cube, which is cube, and you note that here it is in like capital letter and then small letters, alright. So you actually have to convert all of them into small letters. So for name it will become name, and for if there are spaces you can actually convert them like full underscore name, something like this. Alright, and here too you can hover over them and check their code. So here like this. So here bby.data objects.name, and there's a type 2 and session UID, right? So you just turn to Blender data API, and whatever you want to change you can look from here. Alright, and now these are all the options present. Then there's one more thing. You might know that our objects can sometimes have a custom. Sorry, there was an abrupt cut in the video. Like somebody made a voice. Alright, so I had to cut it. So now I was telling you was the custom property. So we can actually store some custom property inside our object too. So you might have also used it. So we'll just create a new property, and here's our property, and now let's name it my first prop and press OK. Now let's increase the min max value and its default value too. We can also write some description like first property created. Alright, now press OK, and this is our first property. Alright, now this property is going to appear inside our objects cube, and when I scroll it to the very bottom of the cube I can see it. So here this is my first property, and to access this property I'll just hover over my first prop, and then I can see the code too. So I'll just make a new code for it. Yeah, I also deleted the file, the text scripting file, so I'll just reference it again. So import bpy. In this I'll just write prop name is equal to bpy.data.objects cube my first prop, and let's check it again if I have referenced it correctly. Yes, right, I have referenced it correctly. And I'll also open the system toggle again and just quickly do it like this. So let's try to print it. Print prop name. Yeah, prop name, it's actually prop value, what the value is stored in this prop. So this is here. All right, prop name, we have actually referenced the prop using that prop name. All right, so but if I want to, I can like change it like this. Now there are also many custom properties because of your add-ons too, and right, so you actually have to like make a very unique prop name for your object. All right, now we can access the min max value using the window manager and whatever. All right, so this is like this, and I'll tell you more things in later parts of the video. All right, so this is it for now.